Loaded.
All right. We are live and recorded. So this is going to go up on YouTube. Don't say anything you don't want on the World Wide Web. Here we go. Welcome to your eco-friendly Rotary Club. For this week, we have a wonderful presentation. It's going to be a cool one. It's going to be a cool one. It's going to be a cool one. Let's begin. Let's begin. If you're familiar with the four-way test, go ahead and unmute your microphone, and we'll just say it all together here, nice and casual. So, of the things we think, say, and do, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? All right, not bad at all. Not bad at all. Let's go ahead and begin with guest. The Henrys, if you want to. Now you're being recorded, so you can't say anything bad about Suzie or Dave, but we'll forgive.
I don't care if you do.
I always say something bad about the Henrys.
Do you want to say hello?
Oh, hello. Yeah. What are you looking for? A little background or something?
Just
or what?
What brings you in and where are you at? How about that?
What brings us in? Well, I just came out from sweating in the backyard, so I'm looking to be cooled off a little bit, I guess. But yeah, just want to hear what Suzie's trip was like. It sounded pretty interesting the other night. So
where are you?
Looking forward to it.
Where are we?
Oh, I'm sorry. Where are we? We are in Cocoa, right here in Florida.
Okay.
Just about a mile south. Not even a mile, I don't think. Half a mile south of down the river. Yeah. They're sailor friends from Dave Andrews sailing. We used to call them the boat people.
We did indeed.
Yeah, that's us.
Boat people.
The boat people. So I had the horse people, the boat people. So when I would have my big Christmas party, all my employees would say, okay, so we recognize the boat people, we know them. And then we recognize the horse people. And then we recognize some clients, but who the heck are those people? So they're always random people that would show up.
You got to tell them what shoes to wear.
People too.
I would have Rotary people too sometimes.
So they got to show up with the rubber boots or the deck. I guess the dock side, the topsiders, right? So topsiders, cowboy boots, or dress shoes.
Now the horsey people all came with whips.
I just want to know if you have the village people, because that would be awesome.
We would dance to the village people, but we didn't actually have them as guests very often.
Crops, Roy, they're crops.
Yes.
All right,
Oh no, I meant real whips, not crops.
No, these were dressage whips, which are much longer and given much more whippy.
We're having way too much fun with that one. I think.
Moving on.
I think Dave Andrews needs to turn off his video between not wearing a shirt and then you're going all pixelated and weird. So
Yeah, you're green and fuzzy there, Dave.
turn your video off, Dave.
Let's get it kicked off. I don't see Ed on the call, so unless somebody interrupts me quick and says you want to be the sergeant, I will ask for, you see how slow I'm talking? I will ask for sad bucks. Let's do sad bucks first.
Anyone have a sad buck?
I don't have any sad.
Not this week.
I don't have any sad bucks.
Ed, about Ed's deal going through. Sorry about that, Ed, if you watch the recording. How about birthdays and anniversaries? That's a fun way to.
I'm sad about a great humanitarian is dying.
Yeah, Jimmy Carter.
Yeah.
So much for the world, even at age 98, Jimmy Carter.
Incredible.
I'll contribute $1 for that one too. It's very sad to be losing him.
Absolutely.
Is that former President
Yes.
Carter?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. That's just for my reference.
Yep.
He's one of the best. He's just
Human being.
the best human being.
Best.
Yeah.
He was not, he had some pretty good successes as president, but he just, apparently he couldn't let it go. And he was so intense that he didn't like to delegate stuff. And so that made it difficult. Plus he ran into the whirlwind that was Reagan and the Iran hostage thing. And that did him in.
I think one of the saddest things I've heard recently about his administration was they actually added, to great fanfare, solar panels to the White House.
Mm-hmm.
And when Reagan took office, he took them down.
Yep.
Hmm.
What a jerk.
And his wife's name is Rosalind. And so many media people call her Rosalind, like they're in New York City or something.
Right now.
You know, it's Rosalind.
Rosalind.
Really insulting. Sorry.
No problem. No
Get
problem.
off my soapbox.
Any other birthdays, anniversaries?
Dave Andrews has a birthday he should be celebrating.
Last night or today or what?
It wasn't my birthday, it was my wife's birthday.
Ah, okay.
That's
Even more,
right.
that's more
I knew
important.
Still, it should be cause for some donation. Of
Yeah,
funds.
I've donated my dollars annually and biannually.
And then Roy, you have a birthday.
Wonderful.
When's your
Next
birthday?
week.
Speaking.
I'm
Dave is wonderful.
happy dollars next birthday dollars next week.
Next week, okay. All right.
Yeah, and Kathleen can back me up that I've put in my money for
I'm just
dollars.
saying, you
and-
are like clockwork. I love it. You make
Yeah.
it so easy.
That's right.
Good, good. Any other birthdays, anniversaries, anything else? All right. Okay. How about Happy Bucks? Or Denise, were you about to say something?
No, I just wanted to introduce my
First in
happy
line.
buck.
Ah, perfect. Go ahead. Kick it off.
This weekend, well, first off, I didn't do anything this weekend, which is wonderful in its own. But I booked my liveaboard in Thailand, which is I'm gonna be on a yacht for like 5 days and just gonna be diving in one of the most beautiful areas of Thailand, and I cannot wait.
Wow.
That's exciting,
That's-
Denise.
wow.
My,
Are you gonna be
Awesome.
Are you gonna be at PP or
No, I'm gonna go to the Similian Islands, and they're
Similian?
only open for like 6 months a year.
okay?
And when they're accessible, they're supposed to be one of the most beautiful spots with whale sharks, manta rays,
Wow.
other types of sharks, and I cannot wait. I'm so excited.
Well, I'm gonna have to go do some research on that. I'm jealous. I
Yeah.
go 3 or 4 places in Thailand, but I've never been there. That's awesome.
Awesome.
Jen?
I have a happy dollar, but first I just want to tell Denise, my parents and my sister and her husband are diving in Grand Cayman this week, and the pictures are beautiful. So, and I went there back in the 80s, and it was amazing, most beautiful place I've been diving. But
That's on my bucket list as well.
yeah, so but anyway, my happy dollar is that I had about a month ago had a pretty bad physical setback. And last Thursday, I found this fantastic acupuncturist, and he was able to diagnose the issue. And I am on my way to feeling much better. So I'm very
Awesome.
happy to kind of have some health back and be able to sit and stand and lay down without excruciating pain. So
Awesome.
Awesome. Awesome. So good to hear. So good to hear. Kimberly?
Yeah, I have a happy dollar. You know, I've been teaching remotely now for the last 2 years, and it's not my favorite thing. I've been begging to get back out on the road, and I got a class in Quito in April, so I get to go. I'm going to go a few days ahead and stay a couple days over and see and go to Ecuador, which is the home of my son-in-law, and where I've never been south of Guatemala in the Americas. I've been south of Guatemala, obviously, but I haven't been south of Guatemala in the Americas. So this trip to Quito, and thanks to Kathleen, I will have an oxygenator because it's 9,000 feet up, and I'm already struggling to breathe. Just thinking about it, but I'm excited. So
I've been
that's
to a
my
Rotary
happy-
meeting in Quito.
I'm sorry.
I've been to a Rotary meeting.
Oh,
in
have you?
Quito.
Well, I'm going to try and find one while I'm there.
You'll love it.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to it.
my parents
Super
were there,
exciting.
and they said it's all like straight up or straight down. All these little tiny cars, 4-cylinder cars, and you pretty much
Tiny-
can't go above
tiny
45
people.
miles an hour. Yeah. But phenomenal food. Get ready to eat some.
Well, I'm not
amazing food.
eating any kui. Kui is roasted guinea pig, and I draw the line at guinea pig.
Ah,
Tastes like chicken.
Yeah, that's then I'll have the chicken. Poi.
with that, Susie, let's see if you can top that. Do you have any happy
I
bucks
went
for penguin
horseback riding.
tacos?
I went horseback riding in Ecuador a few years ago, and we actually cantered horses briefly at like 9,000 feet. On
Oh
the
my
top.
God, the poor
Oh,
horses.
yeah, we didn't do it very long, just to save them. But yeah, it was pretty cool. It was a lovely country. Are you gonna go to Galapagos while you're there?
I doubt it because I'm teaching for a whole week. So,
So you're not gonna stay.
and they actually, if they're going to pay for me to go, they actually expect me to show up. So,
Well, you could extend your trip.
well, I am going to do that. I'm going to stay a few days more, but there's so much to see in Quito. I was going to get a guide for 2 or 3 days and have them take me around and show me stuff. Because my Espanol is not muy bueno.
Again, I have 5 happy bucks. So I'm glad to be back from a great trip and didn't get frostbitten or cold or anything. So it's great. So that's all for me today.
Awesome. You have 5 fingers and a hand to put up.
I have
no
all my fingers
frostbitten.
and hands. Yep.
All right. Well, with that, if there's no more happy bucks, I would like to turn it over to our esteemed speaker for the day.
Oh, what's your face? What's your face? Let me share my
Suzie.
screen. Oh, you have to allow me to share.
Oh, I'm sorry. Here,
That's right.
All right, there you go.
Okie dokie.
I'm going to pin you and your presentation up here.
Here we go.
Oh,
all right,
so
everybody see that?
Yeah.
All right,
Yes.
confessions. George Becker, don't get excited about the quality of these photographs because most of them are not mine. Most of them we had on this trip a professional videographer and photographer along, and he did a phenomenal job. And so I'm telling you right out of the bat, I didn't use a lot of my photos, but my friend Helen that I went with is also quite a good photographer. So a lot of these are hers. There's a few that are mine, but not very many. So this was my dates of Antarctica. I left February 6th. This is I think it's an Adelie penguin. I'm not quite sure. You can see that they were molting. So see the little feathers sticking out on his rump there. They were not very happy because when they're molting, they have to go on a fast for a month while they get through the molt because they can't swim. So they're not eating that entire time. And that's our ship in the background. Come on, where's my, there it is. So, make sure, yeah. So we flew, everybody always wants to know, how long is the flight? And it's long, okay. But I always balance it with saying, well, I'm not standing in the freezing rain with 102-degree fever trying to wait for a bus. I'm in an air-conditioned thing being fed wine and food, which is marginally good. And I'm being taken care of and I'm watching movies or sleeping or whatever. So I'm not really suffering. So it's not a difficult thing. So I flew Orlando to Miami and then had a very quick connection and wound up 8.5 hours down to Santiago, Chile. So over here on the left, you can see I just wanted to show you sort of referentially that Chile is the long sort of orange, light kind of orange color country. And Santiago is right smack in the middle. And then we flew from there, a 4-hour flight down to Puerto Williams. So this map on the right shows you I can never say it right. It's a Tierra del Fuego archipelago. I never say that right, but I think it's archipelago. Most of the cruises, the only way you can get to Antarctica, unless you're working on a research station, is to go by cruise ship. You can fly Drake Passage, which I did try to do last year, but that trip got canceled because they just didn't have enough people doing it. But then I found out later that it's pretty iffy with the weather, so you may get your trip canceled. So we decided to bite the bullet and go down Drake Passage which was 2 days down and 2 days back, which I'll get more into that in a minute. But three of the places you might disembark from, one of them is right here in the middle, which is Punta Arenas. We flew down to Puerto Williams, which is part of Chile. Punta Arenas is part of Argentina. And the other place you might come out of is just above this Puerto Williams down at the bottom. You can see it circled in red, is Ushuaia. And that's another place you can go out of. So we met our ship down there in Puerto Williams. And here's a picture of it. It held about 275 passengers. I think we had 253 on this one. It was a Silver Wind. I was on Silver Seas luxury cruises. We had signed up for them to do door-to-door delivery, so I had a limo service pick me up and take me to the airport and vice versa. So it was nice not to have to deal with airports and stuff. You can see our cabin on the right. My friend Helen went with me. Helen flew in from Minneapolis. Just to let you all know, she missed her connection in Dallas. She had to fly through Dallas, and they only gave her 50 minutes to make it, and she had to change terminals at Dallas. If you haven't been to Dallas lately, it's a monstrous airport. And so she missed it. So she didn't meet me in Santiago. And then when she did get to Santiago the next day, nobody in Silver Seas was meeting her because they assumed she'd gotten to Puerto Williams on her own, which was ridiculous because the only way to get there's a charter flight. So they were not very organized on that. But somebody met her at the airport, and she said he looked very official. He had a lanyard on, he had a placard, and he said, "Oh, Silver Seas, Silver Seas," and she says, "Yes." And he goes and puts her in a car. Which, I mean, this is the stuff where you could have been kidnapped. If she was in Bogota, it could have been a kidnapping. And the guy's driving along and he pulls over and he says, "Oh, I need $2 to pay the bridge toll or something." And she's like, "What?" And so he says, "Well, just take your credit card." So she gave him her Amex Platinum card. He ran it. And then he dropped her off at the hotel. Everything was fine. By the time she got up to the room we were sharing, she had a $6,200 charge on her Amex. And then before she could even get it canceled, there was another $5,000 charge. Apparently there's a big mafioso ring running around because there was another woman, a British woman, the same thing happened to on the same cruise as us. But anyway, we had a nice cabin. It was not huge, but it was right in the bow. We were on the 7th deck. There's 9 decks total. So we were right at the very bow, which turned out to not be such a great location for me later on. So we went down Drake Passage, and this is basically where we went from Puerto Williams down around Cape Horn, and then down to the tip of the Antarctica Peninsula, which is where you cruise because there's not much to see on the other sides, and most of the wildlife and stuff is on the peninsula. So we went around the South Shetland Islands, and it was 2 days. They say it's either Drake Lake or Drake Shake. We were very lucky. The expedition leader was a really interesting Canadian man named Michael. And this was an interesting cruise because there was also a Princess Cruise Lines cruise, which was about 2,000 people, I think, on the ship. But we were an expedition cruise, which means we got to go in Zodiacs and got to go on land. But if you're on one of those bigger ships, they don't do that. So you just cruise and look at things, but you don't really get to touch the land. So we had a kind of a better time because we had the expedition. So we felt superior to all those other people, of course. I did not get sick on this end of it. I was very lucky. They said it was only like the shaking was only about 1.5 out of 10. So it was pretty good. Not so much coming back, but that's a different story we'll get to in a minute. So we took 2 days down, and the first day we were supposed to go to, I think it was Joinville Island, which is just here on the right. You can see there was a place we were supposed to put the Zodiacs in, but we couldn't even get the ship in there. It was so loaded with ice. So we turned and went across Active Sound, which is, you can see on this bottom picture where we went into the sound, which they said only 7 times since 1998 had they ever been able to cruise with this cruise line through that area, because there was usually so much ice in the sound, but there was a lot less ice this time. And so we went through there, but that morning we had gotten out into the Zodiacs. And it's not a great picture because this is one of mine, but you can see on the left all the penguins. This was an Adelie penguin colony. We saw 3 kinds of penguins: Adelies, Gentoos, and chinstraps. This was an Adelie penguin colony. You can see in that picture just above the little map, if you look in the center, there's a bunch of penguins on that little ice floe on the very left there. I mean, the visuals, you know, the glaciers, the icebergs, it was truly amazing to see. And there's the ship with some of the Zodiacs on it up there in the right. And again, these were not my pictures, so don't get excited. One of the things we saw lots of is what they call porpoising penguins. It's when the penguins go swimming along and then they come out And they do this. They just launch themselves out and then go back and out and back, and like porpoises do. And they do it because it's a much more efficient way of swimming for them, because then they can come up, they breathe, and then they don't have the drag, obviously, of the water, so they can swim much faster that way. And it was really funny to watch the young ones, because all the young ones had pretty much fledged out and were trying to learn to swim. And you could see them they were flopping around and trying to do this, but they would sort of get halfway out of the water and just sort of belly flop down. It was really hilarious to watch. They do a lot of things in groups. When they disembark, when they jump off from the land, they go in a group of, say, 6 or 8 or whatever, because it's safer, obviously. The biggest danger, the biggest predator is leopard seals. And we saw a number of those. But we also saw a lot of fur seals and 1 or 2 Weddell seals, but the fur seals were the most common by far. This is my friend Helen and I at the bow of the boat on the left there, and some of the other people that were just people in the Zodiac with us. This is an Adelie penguin that's got his mohawk still. You can still see his fuzz. And they were just adorable. Some of them had more than others, but they all had these. So there were chicks and Zodiacs and chicks with mohawks. So you can see the glacier up behind us there. And you can see it was quite cold. Everyone was provided with the jacket. And I rented boots and waterproof pants. And then you had to put on this life jacket. So you were pretty well insulated all the time. I never really felt cold. The temperature was right around freezing pretty much every day, and it wasn't a big temperature gradient at night. A couple of the days, pretty much every day, it was gray and kind of overcast, and it rained a little bit, but just a light misting. And one day it snowed very lightly and just really covered the mountaintops in this caldera we were in, which I'll talk about in a minute. One of the things they were extremely cautious about is avian flu. They're very, very concerned that the penguin colonies are going to be wiped out from the avian flu, and I know it's going to hit them at some point. But what they would do is every day you would leave your boots in the mudroom, and you would get dressed and all that gear. And I said at one point, I think I'm burning a lot of calories putting on all this gear, but then the drinking and eating at night and lunch and whatever. The food was great, by the way. But I think we more than made up for all that excess calories we were burning. So, but what you would do is you put your boots on, and then when you went out and they went to put you in the Zodiacs, and you went by groups. So we were in the purple Zodiac group. So that group would go, they'd have 3 groups kind of called within 15 minutes of each other. And there were, I think, 12 groups altogether. And so you would walk through a little tray that had some sort of sanitizer in it. You would walk through it before you went down the steps to go to the loading dock. And then before you got on the Zodiac, you would walk through another tray like that. And when you got done and got back off on the ship, you would walk through those 2 trays again. And then you would walk through into a room that had a brush machine that would brush the soles of your feet with more antiseptic and cleansing material, sanitizing material. And then it had brushes that would go around the sides of your boots. And then you would step down and go into another room where you had a team member who you would lift your heel up, your toe up, and show them the sole of your boot. And then if you hadn't gotten it clean enough, they would have you scrub your boots off again. And then you would leave your boots in the mudroom, and you did this every day, every time you got in the Zodiac. And some of those days were twice a day. So they were extremely cautious about trying not to spread the avian flu. And when you did get near the colonies, you weren't allowed to go more than 5 meters close, which is 15 feet roughly, to the penguins. And if they came up to you, which I think I have a picture of one kind of passing kind of close to someone, you had to step away. You needed to step back from them because they don't recognize the 15 feet, but you need to. So they were very cautious about you getting too close to any of the animals. This is one of the little icebergs we saw the very first day afternoon out, and you see these 3 penguins just kind of hanging out there. I just love that picture. That might be one I actually took, but you can see the glacier in the background and stuff. It's just stunning scenery, absolutely stunning. After we left there, we went to Sierra Cove, and then that afternoon, I think, to Mickelson Harbor. And this is just another one. This is another picture from the professional. I didn't get that good of pictures of the penguins, honestly. This is a picture on the left that my friend took of one of the icebergs. They're just so stunning. And this is up on the deck, obviously looking down. And you can see the color of the water and stuff was just absolutely amazing. And I think Helen also took this picture of the penguins on the ice floe, on the iceberg. Oops, didn't want to do that. On the right here. And I think those are probably they're Adelies. I think the Gensus have an orange beak. They had excellent expedition experts. We had a penguin expert, we had seal experts, we had a geologist who was this really charming Scottish guy, probably about 30 years old. And he, every afternoon, they would give presentations if we were moving on the ship about different subjects around Antarctica. But James was really funny one day. He says, "I'm here to talk about rocks." You know, he was so excited about rocks. And he did make it actually very interesting and fun. They were all excellent. I think there were probably 30 different expedition people, varying areas of expertise and stuff. So it was great fun. And they were all very willing to talk to you about anything and just really charming. Most of them were young. There was one lady that was actually my age or older and from Monterey. She was one of the expedition guides, which I thought, oh, so of course, yeah, right. Mike, we could go be an expedition guide. And this is just one of the coves with some of the ice floating. I mean, just again, just amazing stuff to see. There were people that did a polar plunge. I did not do that. I don't have pictures of that, actually. That was one of the last days where we were in a quiet cove. And they said, okay, and they made you fill out a medical form 2 days ahead. And they said, you must wear something. We don't care what you wear, but you must wear something to dive in. And what they did was they put them on the platform that we would launch from the Zodiacs. And then you had a harness on and 2 people would jump at a time and then they'd help you get out. And I decided I was too smart for that. So, and when they called me that morning and said, do you need to come down and have your blood pressure checked before you do the polar plunge? I said, yeah, I'm too smart for that. So Helen and I decided to take a pass on that. I don't mind doing, yeah.
So did your ship ever enter into an ice field?
An ice field? Other than like this, no, not a big one. No,
so you felt the stuff up against the ship?
No, we didn't feel any of that really. I mean, these weren't big enough to do anything to us, these little things, but no, it was an ice ship. I think it could go through ice fields. I think it was built for that, but we didn't have any. It's summertime down there too. So if you look at the timing of when we were there, it's effectively like mid-August. So their mid-February is mid-August equivalent here. So a lot of people want to know about how long the days were. And they were long, but not unreasonably so, because it was, the waning summer. So it was probably dark by 10, and I think the sun was probably up by 5. I could see around the curtain, but it wasn't unreasonable. It wasn't like if you were at the South Pole on June 21st or June 20th, it would have been 24 hours of light, but we didn't have that. And I think the lowest latitude we got was 64, I think. So it wasn't all that low.
Hey, Suzie.
Yeah.
If you go back to that previous picture, there's a structure or something on the right-hand side that's red. Do you know what that is?
Yeah, hang on. My vision, my Zoom thing is, yeah, that would be, they have lots and lots of research areas and research places there. In fact, one place I have in a slide later, I think there's one of the places has like 20 research stations representing like 8 countries. So Argentina and Chile have a lot of them. In fact, one of the islands we were on, I think the next set of pictures, there were some Chilean Coast Guard people there, along with I think an Icelandic guy, and they were setting up some either some weather assessing equipment or something, and they had a little helicopter. So there's a lot of helicopter stuff floating around there, but there's lots of little red buildings you see, some bigger than others, that are parts of the research stations and things going on. A lot of them are unmanned half the year. They're manned for part of the year and unmanned.
Thanks for explaining.
We went to Mickelson Harbor, and where we landed the Zodiacs was a big whalebone area, and this is remnants of a whaling ship. that they just left there. And there's another place we go called Whalers Bay, which I'll show you pictures of. But you can see all of us in our red jackets. And what they had done was set up these red flags that said, do not go off this flagged area. And so we were, you know, we climbed up past this and then went up this hill here on the left. You can see people kind of going up and over the hill. And while I was walking up there, and it wasn't treacherous walking or anything, it was icy, but it wasn't, it was pretty well packed down. One of the things you have to get used to if you're a little delicate, and I'm not, which is the smell of the penguins. Because you get a colony of 10,000 penguins, you're going to have a lot of bird guano. And there's going to be a lot of krill in that bird guano because that's what they eat. And you're going to have a lot of smell. And that's just part of the deal. Just, you know, it doesn't bother me, but people are a little more sensitive to that. So while I started to climb up this hill, these two little penguins were hopping along, and they're so adorable. I mean, they look so awkward on land, and yet they would climb up these, they would be 500 feet up. You could see that, and they would do that. The stronger ones would go up there and build their nests because when they get a lot of rain, and now because of climate change, they're getting a lot more rain, it'll wash away the nests, and it is impacting the breeding capability of them. So the ones that are the more strong ones will go up higher because they don't get as much rain. You know, the rain they don't get the washout that comes from being down on the lower levels. It's really sad that everything that's happening, it's really awful. But I did say to one of the girls that was kind of a penguin expert, you know, I said, they're so awkward, but it's so amazing how they can climb. And she said that literally, I think it was 2/3 of their body up to like the wing is basically tendons and structures to support their talons and their feet so that they can climb amazingly well, having just those two feet to do it with. And she said they just have these amazing structures up, and it goes up into their body very high so they can do this amazing climbing. But this was really cute, and we just had to kind of let them go across the little trail and then move on to the next, wherever they were going. This is a leopard seal. My friend Helen took this picture. Leopard seals are a natural enemy of penguins. They do eat them, and they said apparently they're like a cat. They play with their food a lot. And one of the guides that was in the Zodiac with us from the day before said, yeah, we saw a leopard seal playing with one, throwing it up in the air. And one of the ladies that was a guest says to the guide, you need to do something and stop this. And, you know, he's like, lady, it's too late for that penguin, first of all, but I'm not stopping anything. You know, it's like, this is just part of the circle of life. And I'm sorry, it's hard, but, you know, he's got to eat. So you want to look at this beautiful seal, but he's got to have a meal too. And of course, I'm not a vegetarian or anything. I prefer to, but I do prefer to get my meat the coward's way, which is go to Publix and have it wrapped in plastic. But yeah, those leopard seals, they're beautiful, beautiful animals. This is an abandoned research hut on Mickelson Island. So when we went up and you saw the two penguins crossing the trail, went over this hill, and there was this research hut down there. I did not take this picture. This was a professional. And it's basically been abandoned for years, and it's been taken over by penguins. They don't go in it, but they go all around it and stuff. So you can see they're just kind of hanging out, and they're quite fat, these penguins, because they're starting to molt. And if you look at the one down kind of near the front here, kind of at the point of the building, he looks kind of moth-eaten, and it's because they're molting, like I said, and it's that time of year for them to molt. So they fatten themselves up. They eat a lot before they start to molt because they literally can't go in the water for a month, and it takes them a month to get through that whole process. So they get quite fat. We did set foot on the continent of Antarctica for 5 minutes at Orne Harbor. There's me and my friend Helen, and because we were supposed to go to another harbor I'll tell you about in a minute, but we went to this one. They said you can only stay there 5 minutes, and we have to move on. So we went to other islands and other bays, but not on the actual physical continent. So this was the 5 minutes of fame that we had being on. So this was my 7th continent. So that's one reason I wanted to do it this year, is I wanted to have all 7 continents under my belt. And now I'm not one to check a box. Like if I hadn't been able to stand on these rocks and say I was on Antarctica, I still would have said I went to Antarctica. I still would have counted it. I'm not that pedantic about silly things like that. But yeah, you can see we're all rugged up, and and well covered. And like I said, it wasn't that cold to me. It was chilly, but it wasn't that cold, so it was pretty pleasant. This is a fur seal on the left. Again, these are not my photos. I didn't get that close to this guy, but let me go back. So behind us, over like on the right, on those rocks, there were 3 or 4 fur seals there. And so when we got back in the zodiacs, we went over and we were looking at them and watching them. And they're like any other animal. They're mostly just laying around sleeping. So they weren't doing anything particularly interesting. But the photographer did manage to catch this picture, which I thought was a great picture. And then this is I think climbers actually come and climb this. I forget what they call it, the splinter, I think, is this. It's probably about 900 feet high or something. I don't quite remember. But we went by that over by the glacier. So we went on the left-hand side of it over past that snowy bit, and that's where we landed. And then what happened, we were in Orne Harbor when we landed on the peninsula. So you see this Gerlach Strait on this map here. Orne Harbor is down here on the left. I'm pointing to it as if you could see where I'm pointing, right? And you can see this is the Antarctica Peninsula here, and then these are the South Shetland Islands up. So what happened was we were supposed to go a little bit further south into another harbor that said, they said it was about 3 miles. So we were just going to kind of cruise there at lunchtime, and then we're going to disembark again and spend more time on the land mass of Antarctica. But all of a sudden we realized we were moving very rapidly, and it was lunchtime. And they came on and they made an announcement and said, you know, at the very beginning of this, we said that if we have someone who has a life-threatening event, we will change our itinerary and you will have to live with that. So they came on and said, remember when we said that? Well, one of the crew members had a life-threatening emergency and we have to get back to King George Island. And they said, I think it was either a heart attack or a stroke. They never really said, but the implication was a heart attack. And so they said, we're driving it like we stole it, because we have to get to King George Island because that's the only airstrip. And they couldn't fly in at night because of the weather. And it was going to take us more than 12 hours to get there. So we weren't even going to arrive until 1 or 2 a.m. So we went straight back up through the Gerlach Strait as fast as we could go to get this poor guy offloaded. And I think we arrived about 2 in the morning, they said. And then by the time they got him offloaded, and then they couldn't fly out until morning, but they got him into a little hospital they have there and offloaded him. And then they flew him out to Punta Arenas, where they had actual hospitals. So it's about a 2-hour flight. And we were wondering why we saw the helicopter. I mentioned the helicopter at Michelson Harbor with the Chileans doing something there. And but the problem with the helicopter, most of the, like our ship did not have a helipad, but most of them wouldn't have the range to make it that far, even if you did have a helicopter. They couldn't have flown him back no matter what we did. So we had to book it back for him. So we got him off, and then we found out he was doing okay. Apparently he was stable, but they said he was still in ICU and stuff. So these are just some other pictures from while we were doing that. But one of the things we did as we were cruising along, we saw dozens of humpback whales. We did see lots of whales, a lot of whale activity. They were breaching. They were we just saw a lot of fluking, you know, where they put their tail up and go down. And we didn't see anyone, like, there was no jumping or anything like that, but we saw a mama and a baby doing some things and kind of rolling over. And that was really cool. In this one area, they were surrounding us in this one harbor we were kind of cruising through. So that was really cool. We saw, I think, only one other kind of whale, which I think was a minke. But you just see kind of their back, and you don't see a lot of their body. So you just see them kind of breach, and you watch for blowholes when they're blowing the air out, and that's what you see. That's how you identify them pretty easily. And sometimes you'll see them come up, but mostly it's the blowholes you look for. So we went to King George Island, and I did some research on it. And they said only 10% of it is ice-free, but it supports year-round bases from 8 countries. And I think there's 20 bases on King George Island, which is up here on the right. From there, we went down to Deception Island, which is down here on the bottom. And that's a volcano caldera. It's actually an active volcano. And so you see that little opening there, which is called Nelson's Bellows. And we actually went through that. It's quite treacherous, actually. And they had to turn off the stabilizers on the ship, which you don't realize how much benefit you get from those stabilizers. until they turned them off for the 10 or 15 minutes we needed. We're like, whoa, we're getting a lot of movement here. So it was pretty cool. And so here's a bigger picture of it. So we went through this area on the right called Neptune's Bellows, and apparently there's a huge rock underneath the water that if you don't know where it is, you could really ruin your day. And then we were supposed to go over to Telephone Bay, and this was kind of a morning cruise. And we got there, and this is where they said if you land on the beaches, you can actually dig down and feel the warmth from the volcano. And if it's the right temperature and settings, it'll be steaming off the beaches. But it was blowing about 30 knots when we got there. And they said, yeah, we're not putting the Zodiacs in on this. One of the days we did get in the Zodiacs, and it was about a 3 foot up and down getting into that Zodiac. It was maybe 2 feet, but it was pretty scary. Most of the days it was quite calm, but they wouldn't let us disembark to go and look around in there. So then we went back over to this place called Whalers Bay, which is right there next to Nelson's Bellows, and that's where there's the old whaling stations. And they used to have in that bay, they had 9 factory ships processing whales in the summertime in the late 1800s and early 1900s, because initially they would only process the fat, the blubber, but they made a law that said they had to start processing the entire whale's body. And so that changed things. So then they built these factory ships, and they would process the entire body, and mostly they would render the blubber into oils that they would use, obviously, and then the rest of it would go into fertilizer, which they would then ship out. So this is the whalers area where it got wiped out by a volcanic eruption, basically, and then it's all starting to kind of break down and fall apart. These over on the right, we did get off and we walked all along the beaches and stuff there. On the right, those are I think those were the holding containers for the whale oil. And this is like living quarters here on the left. And they leave it there. It's probably in 10 more years, it won't even be there anymore. And this is more of it. And those are things in the front are the big things behind are where they held the oils, and the ones in the front are like pressure cookers. But there were seals and penguins all over the beach. And there was a seal that came down and he was heading to the water, and you could see one of my friends that I met on the ship, he recorded it, so this is part of his recording. And you see this lonely little penguin with our ship in the background. So this was basically the cruise that we did, which the thing on the left is the line on the left is where we came down from Puerto Williams, and then we cruised over into the South Shetland Islands. Oh no, sorry, it's from Puerto Williams down to number 4 is where we went into the Active Sound, which is named after a ship that was down there. And then down and around, you can see we kind of cruised all around the islands, and then we went back up to King George Island, and then the 8th location, probably day 8, and then back up through Drake Passage. Drake Passage going back, they said was going to be another really calm one. So I didn't put on the ear patch. I was thinking I'd been on the ship long enough that I kind of have my sea legs. I didn't feel like I needed it. And it was going to be a very calm, but about 5 a.m. I woke up and went, wow, something's different. And we had been hit by a bunch of waves. They weren't big. It was still only about a level 2, but because I was in the bow of the ship and I was facing the bow, my feet were facing the bow, and that ship was going up and down like this. And then I got up to just go to the bathroom briefly and came back to my bunk and said, oh, that wasn't such a good idea. So then I was really sick for until 1 o'clock in the afternoon, when my friend remembered some anti-nausea medicine she had from when she'd had chemotherapy for her cancer treatments. So that fixed me, but yeah, I was pretty miserable for about 6 hours there. I am not a sailor, but I'm not meant for it. But anyway, so that didn't ruin my day completely, but it didn't make me very happy. And then there's me at the end. That's me. I think that's on Mickelson Harbor, and not the most flattering picture, but it's better than nothing. And then thank you. These are Gen 2 penguins, so you can see with the orange beaks. So thank you very much. That was fun. Any questions?
Awesome.
That was fantastic, Susie. What an amazing trip.
It was fun.
Yeah, it's on my list.
Very
So-
nice,
Not on
Suzie.
mine.
Thanks.
It is not
Yeah.
on my list, just because I get sick so easily. So
Well, I do too. And I had the ear patch going down, and then, so going down, I put the ear patch on, and I was like, okay, I'm kind of okay, but then I didn't feel great. So I took a Dramamine, non-drowsy Dramamine. And, I'm one of those, if one is good, then 6 is better. So I waited an hour and I was still feeling kind of not so great. So I took another one, and then I felt awful from the Dramamine for the rest of the day. So I didn't get sick. But the other trouble with the ear patch, I found out, my friend Helen is a retired nurse, but now she's the CEO of 2 hospitals. So she has good drugs on her all the time. And she said the way the ear patch works is it dries out your the fluid in your ear, so that you don't get that much motion, but it makes you have the worst cotton mouth. It was like, I couldn't drink enough water. It was pretty unpleasant for those 2 days. And then once we got in the sounds and stuff, I took them off. So that's why I didn't want to put one on going back across, because I thought, well, maybe I've got my sea legs, maybe I won't be sick, but no, not fun. Yeah, so.
what was your favorite? What was your favorite? What was the highlight of the trip? If you had one moment.
I think getting on the continent itself was pretty cool. I mean, like I said, it wouldn't have mattered too much to me, but just it's hard to pick. I'm one of those people that everything's my favorite. So it's like, oh, I love elephants. They're my favorite until I see a giraffe baby, and then it's just me. So it's hard for me to pick a favorite. Some of the views in the glaciers were just stunning. And it's just so heartbreaking to me to think that, that because of global warming, this is all going to be impacted. And we're just too stubborn to do anything to help it not happen. We being collective humanity, not us in this club specifically. But yeah, it was very sad. And then think the avian flu is possibly going to wipe out. And some of those colonies, one colony we saw was 20,000 penguins. Another one was 60,000. And there was one around the corner from the caldera where we went through Nelson's Bellows. They said was 200,000 penguins. Denise, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I had a question. Did they tell you anything about the mainland Antarctica? Because I read that beneath the ice, there are possible traces of life from like long time ago. And did they tell you anything about that, the research that they're doing there to discover?
No, they didn't actually. No, they didn't. Well, someone did ask. So we had a lot of Aussies and South Africans, Brits, and Canadians on the trip. And someone said, why do the Australians have to go through Santiago and then down through Chile? Because they're right there, right? So the Antarctica's on their southern end. And they said because there's no life on that end of Antarctica.
Huh.
There's nothing to see. I think that the animals need those little bays, and it's closer for them because of the Pacific.
The currents.
Yeah, the currents.
Yeah,
and it pushes the krill down and stuff. And I don't think they have that on the other side after.
All right, interesting.
Yeah. I am by no means an expert on any of this, but
I had heard that same thing, Denise. I was going to ask a similar question if there was any additional archaeological, because I had read a couple of different findings that they were saying, like I guess at the end of the last ice age, the ice was obviously way higher, all the way up into nearly to Brazil, for the end of the last ice age, but that there were settlements and that there were rumors of findings, rumors of evidence that hasn't really been dug into yet. Yeah. So I was
wondering about that as well. We had presentations almost every day, and I didn't get to all of them. The one day I was sick. Other ones I just forgot about it and was doing something else or whatever. And so I could have been that there was a presentation on it. I'll have to look on. I don't remember that though. I think I would have tried to go to that one. They did have presentations on the penguins and seals and all different kinds of things. So it was really good.
And then my real question was, what do you think about those suits, about those dry suits? Do you really think that they would let you live and you're like looking at the ice, looking at the water? How long do you really think you'd make it with one of those suits on?
I don't know. I didn't put one on. They did have kayaking actually.
Oh, really?
And they had 4 groups of kayakers, but because they wanted you to have been able to do a roll and to have had lots of experience kayaking in the last couple of years, which I haven't, and all I've ever done is like ocean kayaking where you sit on top of it. I just said I'm a beginner basically, and they put me in group 4, which happened to never get to go. But they would have worn a dry suit then, but I didn't get to put on a dry suit. But because it was fairly warm, relatively speaking, I mean, if you go to the South Pole in the winter, I think it's 50 below. But you know, it didn't seem like it'd be too hard to survive.
There's a name for
Summer
that.
there, but
What do they call that?
Winter
the
and
weekend.
over.
The weekend. It's called the weekend in Fairbanks.
oh, the weekend, 50 below, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Anyway,
So
go ahead.
yeah, so it was cool. I mean, I'm glad I've done it. I don't need to do it again necessarily. My favorite place in the world is always going to be Africa. So because of the diversity of the wildlife and stuff, but it was definitely worth the trip. And again, you're really well cared for. I mean, the food was phenomenal. I had lobster tails like almost every other meal, and you could get whatever you wanted. And what I did like was there were 4 restaurants, and we kept going to the same restaurant because we liked it the best. But the serving portions were actually very reasonable. They weren't American style, so you didn't feel overfed at any point. You could even have like 3 courses of your meal, a 3-course meal, and you didn't feel like you'd overeaten at all because they just did reasonable portions, and the food was all very, very good and great wines. Chile, a lot of Chilean wines, but also Australian. They even had a J-Lore wine, the red wine they served us one night. You know, J-Lore is one here we get all the time. You can buy it in Publix for $15, you know, so it was great. And that was all inclusive. Drinks and everything were all inclusive. Yeah. It wasn't cheap, but because of it was all inclusive, I thought it was very reasonable. So yeah, any other questions? Oh, Kimberly, you had one.
Yeah, going back to the things that they might be discovering under the ice, I know I've read a little bit about what they're discovering as the permafrost melts and the microbes and things that we're not, can be very dangerous. I worry about the things that might become exposed, that we might become exposed to, that we have no natural immunity to because it's been buried for millions of years.
Yeah. Well, we
Look
don't
at
have
tundra
the
in Russia.
biome. Yeah, we could get wiped out by anything at this point if it breaks loose, and it could very easily, just because of permafrost and the Arctic melting. You know, we could be exposed to all kinds of things. And Denise, no, it's not a rude question. It was expensive. It was about $12,500, but that included airfare, that included everything, and included my driver picking me up in the limo and taking me over to the airport and everything. But yeah, it was expensive.
But unforgettable.
Yeah, no.
It's a once in a lifetime trip, so why not? Why not enjoy it?
Yeah, and
Can't
I'm sure you could
take
do
it
like
with
you could do like the Princess Cruise Line ones, which I'm sure is less expensive, but you don't get on the land, you don't get in those Zodiacs, you don't have, and I'm sure they had, you know, experts on the ship to talk about the animals and stuff. So you would have gotten I'm sure it was a really exciting trip for anyone who was on that kind of ship too. It's just a different experience. Yeah. So, okay. Anything else? It was fun.
Awesome. Thank you for
Glad
sharing
to be
that.
home.
Wonderful,
Yeah.
wonderful.
Well, thank you. And Greg and Elaine, thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Good times.
Yes, excellent.
Yeah, and some other time I can tell you about my Copenhagen food eating trip.
Yeah, we heard enough of
Love
that.
to hear about that.
Oh, my goodness.
I was telling Greg and Elaine and Dave Andrews about that last night at dinner. Some of the
Stories
weird
to
food we
tell.
ate. Yeah.
Yeah, go to Nobu while it's still there.
Yeah. So,
All right.
all right,
Well,
well, that's
thanks.
it for me.
Thanks so much, Suzie. Really, really appreciate it. With that, I guess we could go ahead and close out this call. I can stop the recording. And if anybody wants to hang out and visit, we can. But Suzie, thank you so much. Really, really appreciate it. And with
Always
that,
a
thanks.
pleasure.
Thanks everybody for
Fantastic.
coming. All right.
Thank you.
Who's the speaker
Okay.
next week? Do we know?
Bye, everyone.